Most Australians picking their first investment property are generally choosing blind. There are 10 different property types you can invest in, and depending on which one you pick, you could be sitting on an absolute gold mine, or you could be stuck with something that doesn't perform for over a decade. And the problem is, no one's going to tell you exactly how they stack up against each other. Most people just copy what their friends did, what their parents did, what their mates did, and just hope for the best. I'm Corey Jones, and I've helped hundreds of everyday Aussies generate over $100 million in equity just in the last 5 years alone. And today, I'm going to rank every major property type from F to S tier, so you know exactly what ones are worth your time, what to avoid, and what could be the single most powerful wealth building engine that you can use in property. Now, I'm going to start firstly with established properties. I'm going to mark that as a C. It's simple and effective, but it's slow. Could be really good for first-time investors, but not that good for experienced investors. Secondly, we've got new properties. This is basically looking at purchasing and building. I'm going to mark this one as a B. It's simple and more cost-effective than established in most cases, but the better part about that than established is the long-term holding cost. With lower maintenance, higher rents, more tax back, again, it's really good for first-time investors. Next one up, I'm going to use and go with subdivisions. I'm going to mark that as an A. Subdivisions are more suitable for more experienced investors. There's a lot more moving parts when it comes to going through councils, WPC, all that sort of stuff. Now, with those with a bit more capital behind them, you can get through those planning periods of 6 to 9 months while you wait for things to move on site. But the thing with subdivisions, you can get some really good returns and you can make it way quicker than developing the property yourself. All right, so I'll mark that as an A. Now, with developments, I'm going to put this as S-class. One way that I view this, guys, all roads lead to property development. This is the pinnacle of our strategy here at Motivate and what most of our experienced investors get into earlier than later. A good development is when we can walk into a development site with $1 million and we walk out with $2 million 2 years later. Now, if we do one of those per year for a client on the side, they are never working again and they are completely financially free. Next up, we've got commercial. I'm going to mark commercial as an A. Commercial, in my mind, is a lot more suited for the experienced investors with a portfolio behind them already. They can deal with the large vacancy periods when it comes to trying to find a business to rent your property. They generally have much better cash flow. Right? All the costs go to the business. So council rates, water rates, insurance, maintenance, property management, all of that is done by the tenant, not you. So when all that's paid for, and you're just getting the raw cash flow, commercial can be a fantastic cash flow generator. So again, I'm going to put that as an A. Next property type I'm going to put here is granny flat or auxiliary property. All right, so this is essentially when you're adding a granny flat onto the back of an established property. I'm going to mark this one as a B. Great additions to the backyard for an occupier, and you can spend 100 grand on a granny flat to generate about $300 a week. So that strategy is really, really good if you want some more cash flow. However, the strategy itself is going to be limited by how many properties that you own. You can only really have one granny flat per property. Right, so if you've got one house, you can only have one granny flat. If you've got 10 houses, you can have 10 of them. All right, so it is limited by how much property you actually own first. Next up, renovations. Renovations, I'm going to put as an F. In my mind, guys, this is probably one of the worst strategies you can possibly implement, one of the worst property types. Now, unless you're cosmetically renovating a high-end property to flip, I've never actually seen one of these stack up unless you're in a booming market, which the houses in the market's going to be growing regardless if you spend money on renovating it, or if you're doing all the work yourself. Renovations, in most cases, are an absolute waste of time. There are far better strategies, far better property types you can go where there's a lot less energy for the same sort of returns and rewards. All right, so renovations for me are an F. Dual or co-living. I'm going to mark this as an A. Fantastic at generating cash flow. Done in the right areas, I would want to buy these in very specific or niche markets. So around like universities, hospital catchments, tourist hubs, they can be awesome investments to boost your cash flow, right? So I'm going to mark those as an A. This is generally where we would have our clients in phase 2. Phase 2, we're generally looking for co-living or dual properties. Apartments. I'm going to put apartments as a D. I don't mind apartments. I've lived in a few of them. And obviously without direct land ownership, they tend to not perform as well as say a block of land. However, the other thing you got to keep in mind, guys, is demand. Right? The average person out there wants the great Australian dream, which is a detached house so they can have pets and kids. Most people find apartments unsuitable due to the size and configurations. The final property type, and probably a fairly obvious one, is just buying land. I would mark this one as a C. It can be really, really good if you're buying in a good growth area, lots of infrastructure spending, but you don't have someone paying for the house for you in terms of a tenant. Sure, you don't have to deal with tenants, right? And that's a plus. But you still got to pay for the block and the interest on the block with no income coming in. So it's going to cost you a lot of money just to own the land. So that's why I mark it as a C. Hope that helps, guys. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you've got any questions of the content that we've covered today, feel free to drop a comment below. And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet or to the channel or following us on our podcast players, show us some love and do so. It'll help us continue growing and bring great content every week. If you are looking to get started with your investment journey, use the link in the description below and book a free call with my team and we can see how we can help. Thanks for tuning in.